Welcome to Author's Voice, authorsvoice.net, a virtual book signing network. I am Roberta Rubin, and I am doing a series of book reviews or book interviews called Berta's Books. I am a former bookseller for 32 years in the Chicago area, and my acquaintance with books and publishers and letters has been ongoing for many, many years. Today, we are going to be talking to Roz Chast. I was just going to show the book. To Roz Chast, the author of Going Into Town, a love letter to New York. It is published by Bloomsbury, $28. Thank you, Bloomsbury and Marie Kuhlman at Bloomsbury, for sending us Roz Chast. Roz comes from New York. I gather has lived there all your life, and was born in Brooklyn, adjusting to life in the suburbs where people own trees, as she says in her book, and adjusting, which was a surreal adjustment for her. But she recognized that for her kids, the reverse was true. They needed to live in the suburbs. She gives 5 reasons why they moved out there. And of course, schools and fresh air were some of them. So on trips into town, they would marvel at the strange world of Manhattan. It's gum-wadded, dotted sidewalks. There's a wonderful image of that in the book. Honeycomb streets and those West Side Story things. Their wonder, her children's wonder, inspired this book, Going Into Town. And it's a book written by a cartoonist, Roz Chast, so it's very funny, has some wonderful moments and drawings. And it's playful. It's part New York stories, part a love letter to the city, as told through your touching and true cartoons. Actually, I'm going to start right here saying the love letter. You call this Going Into Town a love letter to New York. Is it a love letter to New York? Is it a love letter to your daughter? Is it a love letter to your parents? And I should say, before we ask about your parents or talk about your parents, you wrote a wonderful book, Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant? Here is the book, Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant, that won all kinds of awards. And so I want to tie that into my question as to who was this love letter written to?
The love letter really is to New York City,
Okay.
Specifically Manhattan. I grew up in Brooklyn, as you said, and Brooklyn has changed a lot physically and also in people's imagination since when I was growing up. I think now for young people, Brooklyn has a lot of allure. It's kind of more of a sort of hipster kind of thing. A lot of young people live there because Manhattan got so expensive. Although, from what I've heard now, Brooklyn is so expensive that it's almost as expensive as Manhattan. But when I was growing up, Brooklyn really was the place that you wanted to move away from if you grew up in Brooklyn. And Manhattan was the shining city on the hill.
Right.
And it certainly was that for me. The book's initial inspiration was a booklet that I had made for my daughter when she was leaving our house in suburbia for college in Manhattan. And I had a conversation with her. I wanted to check up on her sense of logistics. And I said to her, well, Manhattan is actually very easy to get around in. It's laid out like a grid. And she said, what do you mean? So I, made this grid. I made, avenues go this way and streets go this way. And so if you want to go from, 45th Street to 48th Street, you walk uptown 3 blocks. It's very hard to get lost. And as somebody with a horrible sense of direction, this is very important to me. And she actually said to me, what's a block? So,
Okay.
yeah, so that's
a tip-off.
as a tip-off. So I made her a little booklet that she could kind of carry with her when she was in Manhattan and navigating her way around. And it told her sort of what the basic layout was, you know, how Fifth Avenue divided the east side from the west side, a little bit about the subway, you know, the east side trains, the west side trains, where you would change to, you know, where the subways overlapped, what a cross street was, you know, a little bit about the buses, how to get a Metro card, just basic stuff. Because I wanted her to love the city, and I thought that, like, one of the things that might prevent her from loving the city the way I loved it was feeling sort of too confused. So, and a lot of guidebooks, they tell you where to go, and they, you know, tell you about, you know, this museum or these stores or whatever, but they don't tell you the architecture of the city. Or they might tell you about the architecture, but they don't tell you the logistics, you know, the underpinnings, like how it's laid out.
It took me a while to learn what a cross street was.
Yes, and
because I would go to visit publishers.
Right.
And they would say, we're on the cross street of 55th and Broadway.
Right, and you'd have to know, because, you know, Broadway, it could be anywhere. So 55th tells you it's here. So, you know, just stuff like that. And then she gave it back to me after 4 years, and it was all bent up and stuff. And she said, "Mom, this was great. This was really helpful." So
Nice.
I sent it to my agent, and I said, "Do you think there's a book here?" And it also had a lot of cartoons. It had a lot of drawings, and, you know, because I like to doodle and draw. And she said, "Yeah." And so initially it was going to be this sort of guidebook, like an expanded guidebook to New York. But then as I was writing it, I felt that I really wanted to talk about why Manhattan was, you know, how much I loved it and how much I appreciated it, and how grateful I was really for, you know, that it exists, and that I was able to sort of make my life there.
And you can expand on what you gave to your daughter.
Yeah, right. So it's
years
both.
Earlier.
It's kind of a guide, and it's kind of like...
It's an insider's guide, but you said it's not. But for me, as an outsider, it felt like it was a little insider's guide of certain aspects
things
of it.
But I think if it's... I mean, I didn't want it to feel like an insider kind of guide, more like these are the things that I really, really love about the city. I mean, for me, I'm so biased, not only because I grew up there, but because there are certain things about outside of the city that make me very anxious. For one thing, I finally had to learn how to drive, but I really don't like to drive. And so New York is like, I can actually take the car and put it in a wastebasket and never think about it again. So that's, you know, you do not need a car in New York, ever. Also, I have a horrible sense of direction. So, you know, I like the grid aspect. Also, I have no interest whatsoever in, like, yards. I don't even understand what the point is. I really, really do not understand. I mean, I live now in an area where people get into their lawns, and I just so could not give a expletive about lawns at all. I kind of dislike them. I don't garden. I don't like to be outside. I don't like branches. I don't like animals. I mean, I like pets.
You found the right city.
It really feels very
really
comfortable.
did.
It's very, for people like me, this is a very good place to live. But I don't want it to feel like an insider's guide. But I know there are other people who feel the way I do about, like, branches and lawns and things, and bears.
Right.
So,
and bears.
So,
Right.
you know.
Well, and I wanted to quote from the most recent New Yorker, where you have a piece on finding a knife.
Oh, that knife.
On the knife on the
So
sidewalk.
crazy, yeah.
But a piece that a frame that I picked up was your husband saying, you know, people are nice in New York. You say he's a Midwesterner.
Yes.
And he thinks people are nice.
Yes, not nice in New York. He just says people are nice.
People are nice.
Yeah.
That's right. And so you think that contrasts with New Yorkers?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was taught when I was growing up, never, ever look people in the eye, because they could be nuts, And the last thing you ever want to do is set off a nut. And there are lots of nuts, and they're just like waiting to be, they're like powder kegs. You know, you're sitting on the subway, everything is great, and like maybe somebody has an unusual haircut. Do not look directly at the haircut. And if your eyes catch, like their eyes, like it's like boom, they could just like go off on you. Suddenly they're like, you know, they're stabbed. So you can look at the haircut, but you just like kind of like, you look around, you're like looking, I'm not looking at your haircut, I'm looking at that ad, and then like your eye kind of glances over the hair. And so I learned how to look, you know, just this weird kind of like, just, I wouldn't quite call it distrust, but like just, I don't want to engage with a nut. You know, I don't want to accidentally get caught in that. So,
well, and I could relate to what your husband said.
Yeah,
because
people are
I go
nice.
to New York quite a bit, and I don't feel there are a lot of nuts there because
No.
I'm a Midwesterner.
Right.
And it's
People are
something
nice.
I've grown up with, just trusting the neighbor until,
That's-
of course, something happens.
Right. And I
So-
don't trust
So
anybody.
so we're regional.
Yes, it's a regional thing.
I forgot to
personal.
say, and personal,
Yeah.
I forgot to say at my introduction that if you're watching this live, that please use the button below the player to submit a question to our author and include your name and where you're from. And so I will start to ask some of the questions that are coming across the wires as well. And then, of course, as a bookseller, most importantly, also order a signed book, which you can get right now. Click the button below, and the author will sign it right here in our studio for you before we leave. So, Roz, that's part of the procedure here, too.
Sign it in blood.
Sign it and fled, exactly. Okay, well, you've answered my question about a love letter to New York. Is it love letter to your daughter or to your parents? Has your daughter fallen in love with New York as you have?
I think when she was living there, she did love it, but I don't think that she fell in love with it the way I did. My son, however, lives in New York. He loves it.
And he loves it.
Yeah.
So,
And we find the same sorts of things funny, and I don't know, the same, you know, there'll be like a supermarket that is so, I'm not going to say the name of the supermarket, but sometimes there's like a supermarket that I remember when I lived on the Upper West Side, it was so bad and nobody ever went there, and it smelled, and there's like, and it's closed half the time, and it's still there. It's still there. It is just the weirdest thing. So we both find that funny. I don't know why. So, you know.
that appears somewhere, I'm
yeah,
sure, in your book. Carol from St. Cloud, Minnesota, sent a question in already. And she said, I can't wait to read this book. Should I take it with me to New York next month? And that was a question I had, too. Of course, that answers the guidebook idea. But how do you feel?
Well, it depends. It's a hardback. So, like, I should say yes, but he's like, now, yeah, definitely. No, I think it would be very helpful. I think it has a lot of helpful information, but also, like, I know I'm really, like, when I carry stuff with me, I can get down to, like, do I take 2 lipsticks or 1? And then it's like, I think this one weighs like 1.5 ounces. I'm not going to take 2. You know, who wants to carry that extra 1.5 ounces? But that's maybe just me.
Right. And
Yeah.
I've attended book conventions in New York City where I've dragged along
Yeah.
bushels of books.
Oh, that's such a drag.
So I know
Yeah.
it is a drag.
But I would
But
definitely.
they come in handy,
Yeah.
and I think for
I would
someone
read it
new
before you go.
going, I think it's
I think it's a good book to read before you go.
before you go. Good idea.
And if you're checking your luggage, then yeah, bring it.
Then bring it. I agree.
Yes. This is way too much information.
Well, but it's also humorous, so it's fun while you're walking through New York to remember
Yeah.
some of your
Yeah.
very
it's
funny
like, I know
anecdotes.
that. I know that standpipe.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I know that rat that's running around
Yeah.
that you picture.
Yeah. That's Jim. Jim, how you been?
Tom from Salem, Oregon asks, I've admired your work in The New Yorker. How did you learn illustration, especially images that are so unique? It's a good question.
Well, I was an only child. My parents were a lot older. I grew up in an apartment, and drawing was one of those things that I could sort of do. That was not noisy, because when you live in an apartment, you can't like play ball. I didn't know a lot of people. I didn't have siblings. My parents worked all day. The people who took care of me didn't speak English. So drawing for me, that's basically what I did. I read a lot and I drew. And they were kind of quiet activities that you could do. So I think it's just something I always did.
That you did.
Yeah.
Right. And then you went to the Rhode Island School of Design.
Right,
so that perfected your talent.
Well, I don't really think it perfected anything.
Anything.
I did learn that I was a terrible painter. I did learn that.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
Yeah, horrible.
Well,
But,
look
yeah.
at your books, though.
Yeah.
Right. Wonderful. Okay. When I was reading the book, I was wondering if you were talking to me, the reader, as well as to your daughter. You say, I hope you will love the city as I do. And
Yeah.
you're trying to convince me
Definitely.
of that as well.
Definitely.
Good.
I mean, I
Good.
feel like this book is for anybody. I think I love, well, as I said in the book, it's kind of, for me, the city is like if you saw a movie that you really, really loved, or you ate at a restaurant that was really great, or you were watching a series or something, and that's what you would tell a friend. You would say, oh, I'm watching X, you've got to see it, you know. And so I feel like for me, the book is a way of like saying, New York is so, so great, and it's partly great because of all the things that you're going to read about in guidebooks. The Metropolitan Opera is there, and this is there, and you know the best art museums in the world are there. And but there's other things about New York. There's all of that, and yet there's other things that are great. And I love it so much, and I hope that you will love it too.
Right.
You know.
And I do love it as an outsider.
Yeah.
Because I travel there, but I have never lived there. Yeah. Are there places that you walk to or about when you say, oh, I never knew that was there?
All the time. That's the other thing about New York that I love, that as opposed to most other places I've been, or a lot of places I've been, there's not that sense of the infinite. Like, I mean, I write about this a little bit in the book. The Metropolitan Museum is a sort of microcosm in some ways of New York, that there's no way you're going to see it all. By the time you've seen it, something has already changed. They've swapped out some exhibit and put something new in. It's the same thing with New York. You can't see it all. And so I think if you have any kind of, you know, not to get morbid, but if you think about death a lot and like the ending of everything, and then New York has this kind of very infinite feel to me that, you know, I mean, I guess it could go the other way, that you could get depressed because you know you're never going to see, you know, the whole thing. But there's a very open-ended sort of, like, I'm never going to eat in every restaurant in New York. I'm never going to see everything in the Metropolitan Museum. I mean, I go to art museums sometimes and it's like, really? This is the whole museum? There's not some wing you're hiding from me? You have like 3 urns? What? You know, I just can't believe it. But the Met, there's always something, like, suddenly I'm in a room with like tiles from Persia or something, and I've never seen it, and I just can't believe it. You know, it's like, how did I never, I've been to the Met a million times, I've never seen this. And that's very exciting for me.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
I know there's a double page on all the entertainment opportunities.
Oh.
That would drive me crazy if I lived in New York, wanting to do it all the time. Do you get over that, where you say, okay, I can see Hamilton, and then I go to the ballet, but there seems to be I don't know, too much to do, and maybe that's my personality. If I want to do it all,
I think
do
I
you
have.
do you get over that?
I don't know. I don't have that. I feel like it's comforting
It's
because
comforting. Okay.
I feel like I'll never come to the end of it.
Okay.
You know?
That's nice.
Yeah.
You're right. There's always
There's
next.
always the next thing. There's always something else to see, another world to discover. You know, you never really come to the end of it. There's a library you've never been to. There's, you know, some sort of theater that you've never seen. There's, you know, an improv club that just opened up. There's, you know, boy, I didn't know about Gypsy Cabaret. And, you know, suddenly a whole world opens up to you, you know.
Well, and also your chapter on food.
Oh.
It's just wonderful. I love to taste different kinds of food.
Yeah.
I remember one of my customers in my store coming in and saying, I just came back from New York, and there's not a bad place to eat there.
Oh, there are. Oh, boy.
So I didn't differ with him, but I'm
Yeah,
sure you,
yeah.
I've never been there when I haven't had just a wonderful meal.
Oh.
But you do get
Oh,
quite
my-
a big selection.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
you get rabbit as shown on the screen here.
Oh, my
Right.
God.
House of Rabbit.
Yeah, yeah, weird blends like, you know, Senor Hitachi sushi tacos. You didn't know about that Japanese-Mexican fusion.
Oh,
cooking.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's going on there. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, I love your maps of the city, both above ground and underground. Was that on the screen at one point? And of course, that's when I got into, is this a guidebook or not a guidebook? And
Sort of a Venn
but the
diagram.
maps, how
not
did you
a
get the
guidebook.
maps of those? Did you just make those subway maps up?
I made the subway maps up pretty much. I mean, there's a lot. There's some real maps. The Central Park map is real. Mm-hmm. That one is totally real. Mm-hmm. But the subway, all the stuff underground, that cutaway view is not real.
No. What about writing a book about Brooklyn? Because you also know that.
That
so
is my next book.
Oh.
Actually, I am going to write a book about
okay.
Brooklyn.
Okay, I
Yeah,
didn't know, but it seems like a natural.
That's what I'm working on right now.
All right,
So.
because that too. And then you've
Yeah.
got the other boroughs, right?
Yeah, well, by that
If you-
point, I don't
although
know.
maybe-
Then there's the mystery. I mean, those are like mysteries to me. It's like Staten Island, you can't get there by subway.
No,
I don't
right.
even know you take the ferry. And I've done that. I've taken the ferry. And then I don't know what to do, so I take the ferry back. So it's just too
I
confusing.
have that in Chicago, whereas if I cross one of the major highways, I feel like I'm in Iowa.
Yeah,
I'm here
yeah,
in
and you
Illinois.
Yeah,
I am.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm sure you have that too.
Yeah, yeah.
That's very exciting. So I was thinking, could you write about another city? But
Yeah,
Brooklyn,
yes.
definitely.
Yeah.
And you talk about the parks. You think that, I mean, I love Central Park,
Yeah, yeah.
but I don't think New York would be a wasteland without Central Park, or did you?
Oh my God! Central Park is the lung of the city. I
Right,
mean, it
right,
really is.
okay.
It would be a terrible thing.
No, it would be.
I mean, it's
yeah.
literally. I think the city couldn't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
It's. I don't remember what percentage of the borough it covers, but it's big, and it's
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 thrilling.
incredibly
It's
thrilling. It's
thrilling.
incredibly beautiful, and it's really it's so inspiring too, because it's really designed for people's enjoyment, and it's just very optimistic, I think. And there's lots of parks. I mean, there's the High Line also.
Yes.
And,
I love the High Line.
yeah, it's gotten very, very crowded, but it's such an optimistic, thing to sort of take this, horrible piece of the West Side Highway, and it was just crummy, and they made this beautiful thing. And I know New York, some people miss the more, the grittier days of the 70s and the 80s, but I lived there then, and I guess I knew too many people who were held up at knife point and gunpoint, and I don't really have a lot of nostalgia for that. I guess I'm not really that nostalgic in general, but yeah, I mean, the rent is high, so that's a drag.
Sure.
Yeah.
As you walk down the street, Roz, I love to take pictures, so I can frame a picture and stop. Do you frame something as you're walking down the street and say, I've got to get that image?
Oh, well, I have pictures in my book. Can I?
Yes, you may, of course.
I mean, one of the things, this is, is it's an oddball book, but like,
Okay, that's an answer to my question.
Yeah,
Right
I mean,
there.
you can, like this standpipe here, I mean, what is that? I mean, I think of it as it's the god of all standpipes, really, and it lives in the Flatiron District in New York. This one here, she's tricksy. She's saucy, isn't she? She's also a little into possibly S&M. But they're very anthropomorphic. I mean,
I love that page now that you bring that up.
it's just, I think one thing that I hope the book does is that like you just walk around and keep your eyes open. Just open your eyes, open your ears, listen to conversations, look at people, not in the eye, you don't want to set anybody off.
Or I might be knifed or shot.
Look around. Just keep your ears open, and you'll overhear funny things and
languages.
And millions of languages and styles of dress, and that's what I want people to get from the book.
And you've captured it in this book, Going Into Town, a love letter to New York. I'm impressed, Roz. Wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you for having me.
For appearing on this show.
Yes, my pleasure.
Well, and then I have just a little wrap up here because I want to talk about what's coming next to Author's Voice, the virtual book signing network. On October 14th, A House Divided welcomes John Marziak with his Grant's Memoirs and Charles Calhoun with The Presidency of U.S. Grant, a U.S. Grant double feature. That's at 12 noon, October 14th. Coming up on October 20th, A House Divided talks to Brian Dirk and Guy Fraker about their new books exploring Lincoln's Illinois years. That begins at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Then on October 21st, Lit with Love returns to talk to Pintip Dunn about her latest novel, Seize Today, a sci-fi novel that wears its heart on its dystopian sleeve. That's at noon, October 21st. Come back to authorsvoice.net for updates and details as we get closer to those dates. And look into the archives because we have the former interviews all archived, and you can certainly either visit the archives or buy books from the archival history. Thanks for tuning in. Even if you are watching this on YouTube after the broadcast, you can still order some signed books. Thank you.